Now listen, growing a balcony garden is a great way to be creative, sustainable, and to absolutely reap the rewards of having fresh organic vegetables. I think that creating your own balcony garden is like creating a little bit of paradise. Honestly, it is just so nice out there. Space is obviously at a premium when you're growing on the balcony, and if you're anything like me, you might want to balance using the space for growing, space for the kids to play, and also space for you to enjoy as well. Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two, and homemaker. Come along with me as I share my love for simple living, growing in my allotment garden, diving into what it means to be an urban homesteader, and embracing life as a mother and homemaker. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective. I am so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Today I want to talk about balcony gardening and how to grow your own veggies in a balcony garden. Now, I have grown on my balcony for 6 years. We have lived here for 6 years. My balcony is just under 4 meters in its sort of width along the building and 1 meter across. So it's quite narrow but quite long. And yeah, I have absolutely loved growing on my balcony. I have had my allotment for a year, so I solidly grew on my balcony for 5 years, and it has been incredible, and I have learned so much along the way. And I just want to come on and share with you, if you have a small space or you only have a balcony, I want to empower you to just utilize it and grow what you want to grow there, because I don't want you to let the small size of the space you have, whether it be a very, very small patio size garden or a balcony, I don't want it to keep you from growing your own vegetables and just giving it a try. So yeah, today's episode is going to be diving into how you can prepare your balcony to create a vegetable garden, what you kind of need to do, how to keep things on your balcony healthy, because it's not quite the same as gardening in the ground, and whatever else comes up along the way. So let's dive in, shall we? So if you live in a flat or an apartment, or maybe even, I don't know, maybe like a maisonette, we live in a split level flat, or maybe you live in a very small house that has very limited outdoor space. I want you to hear me when I say you don't have to settle for a boring balcony, and you don't have to settle for not growing your own produce. So you can absolutely transform your balcony into a space where you can grow your vegetables, and it's actually a lot easier than I think you're thinking it is. So you can fill your balcony with tons of delicious fruits and veggies. And, this is the perfect time of year to be putting this out there, because obviously we're just going into growing season. So there are some fantastic things you can do to sort of prep and get ready, and maybe just try growing in a small space this year. So I'm going to tell you about the basics of balcony gardening, choosing the right kind of plants, and how you can create a great setup. So you can grow from seed, you can purchase your plants from a garden centre, whatever works best for you. I'm going to tell you how you can get started and how you can make the most of it. And do you know what? It is so much fun, and I think you'll find that you're going to be hooked. So gardening is such a fun and rewarding activity. And if you are like me and you want to start growing your own produce, then balcony gardens are an absolutely great way to optimize the space you have, especially if you live, like I said, in a flat, an apartment, maybe a very small house that has a very, very small outside space. Maybe you live, in a city, and that you don't actually have any access to any green space. So growing your own food is fantastic. It is a great, easy way to reduce your carbon footprint, but more importantly, to add fresh organic produce to your diet. So I know that it can be really hard to imagine that you can grow very much on a balcony that's going to make a difference, but I want to tell you that you absolutely can, because every single piece of produce that you are able to grow is absolutely going to go some way to help towards feeding your family. And why you might not be able to achieve self-sufficiency on a balcony alone, I think you're actually going to be a little surprised to find out just how much is possible in a small balcony space. So let's dive into it. I have sort of had some thoughts about how you can sort of set up your balcony, the things that you might need, things that are great to grow, and I want to share all of that with you today. So first of all, whether you have a balcony, a small outdoor space, whatever you have, let me tell you, you are completely able to grow from seed. Something that is great that I have found on a balcony is, you know, those very small little plastic greenhouses. They are fantastic. All you need to make sure is that you are able to either weight them down or, secure them down somehow. They tend to be a bit flighty, and, the single piece of wind comes past and it will knock them over. Now, I wasn't able to really secure mine at the top. I only secured it at the bottom, and it was standing for years. So I actually only got rid of it towards the end of the season last year because my plastic had finally ripped. It just gets a bit brittle, and I actually made the mistake of leaving it out winter after winter when it wasn't being used. And actually, I think that was sort of the nail in the coffin, so to speak. So actually, a great tip that I have when it comes to those small greenhouses is when the growing season is over for the year. So I would say sort of maybe mid-autumn, you kind of get a feel for, when the weather's about to turn, and I always go out and just give the balcony a bit of a clear up and just pack everything away, secure it for winter. That is a great time to take them down, pack them away and store them somehow. If you're able to store particularly that plastic part, if nothing else, get the plastic covering, just packed away and inside if possible. I think the cold weather makes it really brittle, and then it's very easy for it to rip in future. But that being said, they are great, and there are a number of ways you can secure them down. Something I like to do is, if you have any sort of old plastic bottles, fill them with water and lay them over the base, the bars on that. And I also have sort of tied them to the base of my balcony as well. That just means that, if it does get windy, and it can get pretty windy. I am on the third floor, my balcony's on the third floor, and it can, and we're on a corner as well. So in a bad windstorm, the wind can really, really whip round there. So it's never knocked it down, but that's because I secure it tightly. And that's a great way of doing it. Another way you can do it is actually, if you can get some sort of rope, you can actually, if you tie it to something heavy on each end, you can actually sort of have it hanging over the top. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well, but basically you could use a brick or, again, a bottle of water, tie the rope around that, then feed that rope over the top, and then on the floor on the other side you would also then tie a brick, and that just sort of keeps it weighted down as well. So that's another really great tip. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I do really, really recommend them for balcony spaces. In a garden, you can actually, as long as you can, fix them down, I don't see that they're a problem. And also protect that, like I said, protect the plastic covering through the winter, because otherwise they do get quite brittle. You can buy replacement covers, but also, if you're able to get a actual proper greenhouse, they are great as well. So, they just tend to, they can take off in the wind. So we don't really want that. So they're a great idea if you're going to be sowing seeds. I have done up until the end of last year, which is when I actually took my greenhouses down. That is what I've solely grown in. So even for the allotment last year, I solely did all my seeds in 2 little greenhouses on my balcony, and my seeds were thriving. Had a wonderful year on the allotment, a wonderful year on the balcony. I've had many wonderful years on the balcony, so they are really, really good. So I definitely recommend that. So you can absolutely grow your plant from seeds on a balcony, and it just works wonderfully with one of those small little greenhouses. So when it comes to once you've got past the seed stage and you're not, you're like potting on and you actually got your plants out there on the balcony, or maybe you've just purchased your plants from the garden centre, actually utilising the space you have on a balcony can be a huge deal. So that's something that's always been really important to me. So I've always used those pots that you can actually hang over the balcony. They've got like multiple spaces for many plants. They are a great option. So you can hang them over your balcony and they can face either outwards or inwards. And those kind of pots, they really enable you to grow a decent amount of produce. And actually utilise the space you have available. Now, we've been very lucky because our balcony construction is actually a metal railing that has like holes in it, which means I can actually hang these pots over the top rail, but I can actually also hang them lower down too, almost creating, I guess, like a wall of produce, if you can imagine it. So they would be sort of like, I try and spread them out a bit so they're not one on top of the other. But I can just sort of have them at any height from sort of ground up really, and just scatter them about, and that's been really good. They just work really, really well. Obviously the pots that are lower down are a bit more shaded, so if you have a similar construction to your balcony, it's probably worth rotating just to make sure everything is getting adequate sunlight. Or if you have produce that doesn't need as much sun, then you can actually just plant them lower down in the first place. So as well as using sort of upward space, I actually don't have any sort of wall space on my building. So my building is actually, so my home has a lot of windows. It's lovely, but it does make it a bit like a greenhouse in the summer. And the short wall under one of my windows, which is on the balcony, was a cladding construction, and so it's just not possible to actually use that for anything. But if you had maybe brick on your balcony and you were able to drill into that, you might be able to secure some planters on there as well, and that could work really well for sort of creating space for growing there. What I do is I actually use larger pots on the floor. So as well as utilising that upward space, I also ensure that all the floor space is used as well. And not all of it, just around the edge, because it's like when I'm using the balcony, I like using it to be out there as my little oasis. I have a mud kitchen out there for my children, and then I'm also growing as well. So it has to be multifunctional. So I do utilise the floor space, but I utilise the floor space around the edges, and so it doesn't take over too much. Now, growing on the balcony last year for the allotment made it so it was absolutely like this huge, it was just, oh my goodness, it was chaos. There was plants everywhere, like you couldn't even get out there at some points because there were so many plants out there. And yeah, that was a little difficult, but it's going to be different this year because we're going to have a greenhouse on the allotment. So oh my gosh, I'm so excited about that. That is going to be amazing. So the balcony is going to look a little different this year. But yeah, I utilise the floor space and just use things. So if you're growing things like potatoes, tomatoes are great. They come in like patio pots. Anything like that. Anything that is like cucumbers, peppers, herbs as well are great. So yeah, just things that you can actually stand on the balcony works really good. I always make sure any pots I stand on the balcony, I stand in some kind of container or saucer to ensure that I catch any water when I do any watering. Because this not only helps the roots of your plant soak up excess water when it's needed, but it also makes sure that any water doesn't actually drip off the edge of the balcony. And trust me on this one, because I did accidentally water my neighbour's head once, so please trust me on that. I was mortified, by the way. I was absolutely mortified, but that definitely taught me that use the saucers on things that are standing on the floor, because all that happens is you water your pot, any extra water just comes filtering at the bottom and it just rolls. Like our balcony is a concrete construction for the floor, and it has rounded edges as well. The water just rolls straight off. It really does. I don't have my bare concrete on there. I actually purchased some really nice floor tiles from IKEA. It looks beautiful out there. You can head over to the blog because I actually have a post up on there about me changing the balcony over, and that does look really, really good. So I'm really pleased with that. I did that at the end of last year and it looks really good. But yeah, the water just falls through the holes and then onto the balcony below. So just it has this sort of construction where actually if it rains, the water can get out, which is good. So it has sort of like an openness under the tile. But yeah, so if I just sort of overshoot the water, it tends to drip on the balcony below. So don't do that. Don't wet your neighbours' heads. They might not thank you for it, especially if they had their washing out. Goodness, can you imagine? So let's move on to plants. Like, what are the right plants for your balcony garden? So when it comes to what you can grow on your balcony, let me tell you that the sky is pretty much the limit, and I don't love limiting myself when it comes to what I can grow in a small space. And while it might not be possible to grow everything, and maybe not in the volume that you might be able to do in a garden that, you know, touches the ground or an allotment, I think you'll probably be surprised to realise that there is actually so much you can do in a small space. So my favourite things that I've grown on our balcony, I love doing herbs, and I always opt to grow these on our balcony over our allotment, mainly because of their location to the kitchen. I love to be able to just pull herbs from a plant and be able to put them straight into whatever we're cooking. This obviously wouldn't be so easy if we were bringing it home from the allotment. This year I do plan on doing some on the balcony and some at the allotment because I do want to dry some herbs as well. So the allotment herbs I am going to create some kind of drying rack for. So if you're growing on a balcony, you might find that herbs are a really great starter crop because you can, utilize the idea of a kitchen garden, and you'll be able to create such delicious meals with really, really fresh ingredients. And as well as herbs, another great sort of topic for the garden, is that the right word? I don't know, but a salad garden is great for balcony gardening, and you can include things there like lettuce, cucumbers, tomatoes. Now tomatoes are great to grow in pots. You can grow them in hanging baskets if that's a possibility. That's not possible on my balcony, but the ones that sort of hang higher up. I don't mean sort of like the hanging pots that I was talking about earlier, but actually the actual hanging basket. So you can grow them in that because they sort of tumble down. You can also grow them just in pots that stand on the patio. You'll find that there are varieties that are labelled as patio tomatoes. I always find the smaller tomato varieties are great for balcony gardens, but you can by all means try bigger ones. I grew bigger ones at the allotment only last year in smaller varieties on the balcony, and that just worked really well for me. And whether you purchase plants or you're going to grow them from seed, they are perfect to pick fresh and pop into a salad. Now, I've also had great success with lettuce on the balcony, both Little Gem and those salad bowl leaves. They work great in containers, and I use those hanging containers that I mentioned that just hang over the balcony edge. It's really great because you can actually grow your lettuces with ease. So obviously with Little Gems, you need to give them a bit more space. But, I was able to grow sort of 3 to a hanging pot. And that worked really well, so you could do multiples of those. The salad bowl leaves, they're pretty much like pick them as you go, so you can just sort of like, really you could just scatter them and then just sort of pick what you want, and they work great. Cucumbers as well, I would grow them in pots that sit on the ground, and they work particularly well if, like me, you have a south facing balcony because they really, really like the heat. Now cucumbers are my nemesis, right? I find them really difficult to grow from seed, and every gardener has their nemesis. right? So what works for some doesn't work for others. I know people that can grow cucumbers with ease. I am not that person. But then I also know people who can't grow tomatoes, and I had a brilliant crop of tomatoes last year. And so, yeah, as gardeners, we all have our one nemesis, and cucumbers are definitely mine. However, I'm not giving up. I'm going to beat them. But all you need for your cucumber plant on a balcony is patience, time, and you need the innate ability to know how to water it just enough, but not too much. But also some trellis or a bamboo cane to tie it to as it grows. So I actually have put some trellis on my balcony, so it's very easy for me to sort of attach things, bigger things, as they grow and sort of keep them upright. And other vegetables that I've grown successfully on my balcony, like honestly, I could talk to you all day about the things I've grown on my balcony, but things like peppers, peas, beetroot, radishes, runner beans, potatoes. Sure I'm missing stuff. I actually loved growing beetroot on my balcony. I did beetroot in the ground at the allotment last year in the end, because ultimately it's obviously easier in the ground, and I could do more, but I have done it in pots, multiple pots, and it works really, really well. So don't be put off by root veg. Now, if there is one fruit that I recommend growing for balcony gardening, it is definitely the strawberry. I love growing strawberries on my balcony, and it's something I do year after year. You know, the plants come back and I just keep on growing them, and then I repot them, and then they've sprouted runners. By the way, it's really easy to do runners. I actually know if you're growing strawberries in the ground, right, when they throw out a runner, they would sort of naturally root themselves into the ground. Now that obviously can't happen on a balcony, so you end up getting sort of like these long runners just sort of hanging down, and I just let them sort of grow their little roots out, and then I actually just cut them off, plant them, and they do really, really well. So if you get runners, I would definitely recommend doing the same. Like, they're supposed to be connected to the plant until they root into the ground, but actually I've always had quite success just cutting them off, potting them up, and then I generally sort of will overwinter them. As they're a new plant, I have overwintered them in the greenhouse before, just to give them a little bit of extra protection, but I don't know that you need to. So yeah, strawberries are a wonderful addition to the balcony, and they're also, if you've never grown produce before, they are a good starting one. They are a good starting fruit, especially if you're just sort of learning how to grow on your balcony. They are a great starter. So how do you keep your plants healthy on a balcony? So honestly, it is much the same as a regular garden, with maybe just a few minor adjustments. So in order to keep your plants in good condition, it's really important to care for them for a start. Make sure you water them regularly, and this is really important on a balcony because plants that grow in pots can dry out so much quicker than those in the ground. And this is mainly because they are unable to reach their roots sort of deeper and further for water. So therefore it's really important to keep your balcony plants watered. I always have the problem that when we go away in the summer, that's quite difficult. So I just try and shade them as much as possible if I'm going to be away. So it's also important to use the right kind of soil. So I always use a peat-free compost for them, prune them when they need it, and just try and protect their leaves. I have small children, so that is a work in progress. Don't generally get pests on the balcony, so that's good, but not like I do sort of gardening at the allotment. Make sure that they have adequate sunlight, but also make sure that if they're going to be in particularly direct sunlight all day, and like it's maybe a heat wave, care for them accordingly, because I have a south facing balcony. The sun is relentless on it. It is so hot out there in the height of summer. In a heat wave, I mean, even not in a heat wave, it is relentless out there. But things like cucumbers and peppers, they love that. And so if you want to fertilize your plants, then you can do. And yeah, just a few simple things to adjust from like regular gardening, and that will keep your plants looking and feeling good. So how do you make the most of your balcony garden? I think that creating your own balcony garden is like creating a little bit of paradise. Honestly, it is just so nice out there. Space is obviously at a premium when you're growing on the balcony, and if you're anything like me, you might want to balance using space for growing, space for the kids to play, and also space for you to enjoy as well. So I want to just leave you, before we round out this episode, with just a few tips for making the most out of the space. So as I mentioned, use vertical space where possible, because this will absolutely utilize the space you have. Don't forget to put your containers on the floor in saucers so you don't water your neighbours' heads. Be sure to keep everything really hydrated, because obviously things can dry out a lot quicker. Only plant things that you know that you really like and that your family will eat, because space is at a premium. You don't want to be growing things that you're not going to use. And get yourself a chair and be sure to sit out there and enjoy it, because it feels wonderful with everything growing around you. Now listen, growing a balcony garden is a great way to be creative, sustainable, and to absolutely reap the rewards of having fresh organic vegetables. And you can tailor yours to whatever space or budget you have, and it just requires a little bit of effort to maintain, that's all. Just keep in mind the size and weight of the pots you're choosing, the plants you're buying, and the kind of balcony you have. Is it south facing? Make sure you look after the plants. And honestly, once you get started with balcony gardening, you are always looking for creative solutions to your problems. So I really hope that was helpful. Now, if you're looking to get a little more inspiration for your own balcony garden, or share your successes, or just simply find out more or follow along about balcony gardening, then definitely come and follow me over on Instagram. You can find me there. I am at Life on Plot 44. I share all about my balcony gardening, my allotment gardening, slow and simple living, just living my life. And yeah, just think outside the box and just get started, because I promise you it is so rewarding. And I sometimes think it's a little more rewarding than actual gardening, because you have to be so creative with the space that you have. So I hope that was really helpful to you. Thank you so much for joining me in today's episode. Like I said, come and follow me over on Instagram. I am at Life on Plot 44, and be sure to check out the blog. You can find the blog at theslowlivingcollective.com. And I will catch you in my next episode. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you then.